So who was Fatima? Again, if you're confused and you don't know, what do? You go to your most authoritative corpus of hadith. You go to Sahih Bukhari, right? As someone who subscribes to that. I actually looked this up, and it's mind-blowing. There's just so much to say about this, right? But in the interest of time, I'll focus on just a couple of points. Bukhari has a chapter called Babu Fadl al-Sahaba, the chapter on the virtues of the companions. Fatimah Zahra is listed under that heading. In other words, there's nothing special about Fatima. If anything, she was just a companion. And she's the one before the last on that list. Fine. You open the chapter, Babu Fadli Fatima. You'd think that the only surviving daughter of the Prophet, the mother of his only lineage, the one about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in the Quran when He says, وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ. Let's go and bring our women. And who does the Prophet take along? None other than Fatima, even though he had a whole flock of women he could have taken along with him. Fatima is the only one. You'd think the one about whom the Prophet said, Fatima to Ummu Abiha, the one whose virtues are endless, the one who had a long queue of suitors and people who came to propose to her, people trying to win her over with their money, with their wealth, with their influence. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf was the richest companion. So filthy rich, in fact, that when he died, they had to use axes to break up his gold and jewelry so they could distribute it to the inheritors of the estate. He came to the Holy Prophet. He said to him, "You're asking for 500 dirhams? I'm here to announce that I'm willing to give 10,000 gold dinars. That's 100,000 dirhams, right? And I'll give you 100 camels. And I'll give you this and I'll give you that." فَغَضِبَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Do you know who says this, by the way? The one who reports this hadith is At-Tabari in his Dala'il al-Imamah from the 5th century after Hijrah. He says the Prophet was infuriated at the suggestion that he was willing to part with the soul that sits between his two flanks. فاطمة بضعة مني فاطمة روحي التي بين جنبي, in exchange for some money. But just look at the mentality. Look at how they view this world and how they viewed the Prophet, these hypocrites. The Prophet said to him, "Are you trying to buy her from me?" ثم قبض بيده. He extended his hand to the ground and he took a handful of pebbles. فَقَلَبَهَا ذَهَبًا وَفِضَّةً. The Holy Prophet immediately transformed the pebbles into solid gold. He said to him, "You think I need your money? You think I want your wealth?" The Holy Prophet and Fatima and Ali and the Ahlul Bayt know more than anyone. مَنْ تَزَوَّجَ امْرَأَةً لِمَالِهَا وَكَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ. If you marry someone for their wealth, God will abandon you to her wealth. If you have a problem next time, don't come to God asking for help. وَكَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَى مَالِهَا وَمَنْ تَزَوَّجَ امْرَأَةً لِجَمَالِهَا, as the hadith says, رَأَى فِيهَا مَا يَكْرَهُ. And if you marry someone for their looks, for their beauty, then you will see something in her or him that is truly hideous and disgusting. You'll be repulsed by what you find. وَمَنْ تَزَوَّجَ امْرَأَةً لِدِينِهَا وَهَبَهُ اللَّهُ مَالَهَا وَجَمَالَهَا. But if you marry someone for their religiosity, there's a lesson in this, brothers and sisters, especially for the youth, those who are looking to get married. I know this culture conditions us to look for certain traits and look for certain attributes and characteristics that fall into one or more of these categories that the hadith just mentioned. Don't fall for that. Look for religion. Look for things that have true lasting value, not things that are transient and are going to go away at some point or another. Anyway, You'd think that someone like Fatimah Zahra, who has all these suitors and who have all of these people coming to propose to her and ask her hand in marriage, would be spoken about at length by Sahih Bukhari. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Do you know how many hadiths he mentions in that chapter about the virtues of Fatimah Zahra? Take a wild guess. 2. 2 hadiths. Honestly, when I first saw it, I kept flipping the pages of the book to see if I'm missing something. I thought there must be some missing pages here or something, right? 2 hadith. Unbelievable. Even when it comes to Aisha's virtues, Al-Bukhari mentions 4 times as many hadiths. He's got a total of 8. Which, weirdly, most of them compare her to food items, right? But that's another subject for another day. The point here is, Fatimah Zahra only gets 2 hadith. So you know already that the redactions and the censorships and the covering of the truth has been in full swing. And yet, after all that, right, you still can't deny these 2 virtues of Fatimah. These 2 ahadith just couldn't be redacted, because it would be ridiculous, because it would be too obvious, because everyone would know where this person stands. So we had to include something. And in these 2 ahadith, we have plenty to go by. Hadith number 1, he says, فاطمة قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فاطمة بضعة مني من آذاها. Say it with me. فقد آذاني. I mean, that says plenty already, doesn't it? Hadith number 2. فاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة. So of course you know that they're going to try and twist it and create some kind of justification or context that's going to change the meaning of these ahadith. Of course. Like, we'd be insulted if they at least didn't try. So they do, obviously. In every sharh of Bukhari, there are plenty of attempts to try and twist and turn the meanings of these actual ahadith. But still, after the dust settles, you can't, if you're looking for the truth, if you're a true, genuine seeker of the unadulterated truth, then you'll find it, even in the midst of this confusion and manipulation. Fatima bad'atun minni. She's a part of me. Man adhaha faqad adhani. Whoever hurts her, whoever angers her, man aghdabaha faqad aghdabani. Right? In other versions of the hadith, which Bukhari doesn't mention, but others do, like Muttaqi al-Hindi and others, the Prophet goes into more detail. Man aghdabaha faqad aghdab Allah. Fatimatu sayyidatu nisa al-alamin min al-awwalin wal-akhirin. Because when it comes to Sayyidatu Nisa'i Ahl al-Jannah, they've tried to twist that and say, oh, but Maryam is better because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says al-alamin. When in this hadith the Prophet says, Sayyidatu Nisa'i al-Jannah. But the truth of the matter is, if you are the best among people in this world, and you have someone who is the best among those in paradise, which one do you think is better and superior? If Fatimah Zahra is the mistress of the women in paradise, that makes her the mistress of Maryam herself. All it needs is a little sincerity. And for people to set aside their biases, to set aside their prejudices, to set aside any preconditions, right? Any predeterminations. Just set those aside. Think objectively. Ask Allah for guidance and you'll find it.